in the heart of a forgotten valley, where the wind whispered through gnarled oaks and the earth clung to secrets older than memory, a poor farmer named Eli trudged along a dirt path. His boots, caked with mud from years of toiling in barren fields, kicked up dust as he approached the abandoned stone house that loomed like a ghost on the hill. The house, its walls weathered by time and neglect, stood as a relic of a bygone era, its windows dark and its chimney silent. Eli, a man of simple means and simpler dreams, had heard the village tale as it whispers of strange happenings, of owners who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only rumors of hidden wealth. His own farm had failed him, the soil refusing to yield, and with debts piling like storm clouds, he saw no choice but to claim this forsaken place. The villagers warned him, their eyes wide with fear, but Eli's desperation outweighed their cautions. He pushed open the creaking door, the air inside heavy with dust and the faint scent of old paper. As he stepped across the threshold, the floorboards groaned under his weight, as if protesting his arrival. In the dim light filtering through cracked shutters, he began to explore, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and hope. The house was a maze of shadows, each room a testament to abandonment, a furniture draped in cobwebs, a clock frozen at midnight, and shelves lined with moldering books. In the attic, beneath a pile of brittle newspapers, he found a locked chest, its iron clasp rusted but unyielding. With a crowbar from his satchel, Eli pried it open, revealing a trove of yellow documents tied with faded ribbon. These were no ordinary papers, they bore wax seals and ornate signatures, hinting at agreements made in secret. His hands trembled as he unfolded one, the words contract and bonding leaping out like warnings. The documents spoke of land deals, promises of wealth, and obligations that seemed to stretch beyond the grave. Eli's mind raced. Could these papers hold the key to his salvation, or were they a trap left by those who came before? As night fell, the house seemed to pulse with a life of its own, and Eli felt the weight of unseen eyes watching him, as if the contracts themselves were alive, waiting to claim their due. The days that followed were a blur of discovery and unease for Eli as he pored over the secret contracts in the flickering light of a borrowed lantern. Each document was a puzzle piece, revealing fragments of a story that chilled his blood. The contracts, written in dense, archaic language, detailed agreements between long-dead landowners and shadowy figures referred to only as the benefactors. These deals promised prosperity of fertile fields, endless harvests, and riches beyond imagining, but at a cost that was never fully explained. The terms hinted at sacrifices, vague references to offerings and tributes that made Eli's stomach churn. He found maps tucked among the pages, their lines tracing boundaries that didn't match the valley's current shape, as if the land itself had shifted to hide its past. The more he read, the more he sensed a pattern. Every family that had owned this house had flourished briefly, their wealth blooming like spring flowers, only to vanish without explanation. Eli's practical mind struggled to make sense of it. Were these contracts legal? Could they still hold power? He thought of his own barren fields, the bank's relentless letters, and the hunger in his children's eyes. The temptation to act on the contracts grew, a whisper in his mind urging him to claim what was promised. Yet, the house seemed to watch him, its walls creaking at night, its shadows shifting in ways that defy the light. One evening, he found a hidden compartment in the fireplace, revealing a leather-bound journal. Its pages, written in a trembling hand, chronicled the last owner's descent into madness, warning of the benefactor's return. Eli's heart sank as he read the final entry. They come at midnight, and no law can keep them out. He glanced at the clock, its hand stuck at 11:59, and a cold sweat broke across his brow. The contracts, he realized, were not just paper, they were a summons, a bargain that had ensnared every soul who dared to claim this house. But Eli was not one to run from a fight. He resolved to uncover the truth, to unravel the mystery before it consumed him. Armed with little more than his wits and a stubborn will, he began to search the house for more clues, determined to break the cycle or risk becoming its next victim. Eli's search led him to the cellar, a damp, cavernous space beneath the stone house where the air was thick with the smell of earth and decay. His lantern cast jittery shadows on the walls, revealing shelves of jars filled with strange, unidentifiable objects floating in murky liquid. The contracts had mentioned a sanctuary below the house, a place where the benefactor's terms were sealed, and Eli felt a pull toward this dark heart of the property. He found a loose stone in the wall, and behind it, a narrow passage carved into the earth. His pulse quickened as he squeezed through, the walls closing in like a trap. The passage opened into a chamber, its floor etched with symbols that seemed to writhe in the lantern's glow. At the center stood a stone altar, stained with something dark and ancient. On it lay a single contract, different from the others, its text written in a language Eli couldn't read but felt in his bones. It was as if the words themselves carried weight, pressing against his mind. He reached out, hesitating, then pulled back, remembering the journal's warning. Instead, he examined the chamber, finding carvings that told a story of rituals, of promises made to entities that were not human. The benefactors, it seemed, were not mere men but something older, tied to the land itself. Eli's thoughts spun. Had the previous owners known what they were signing? Had they paid the price willingly? He returned to the attic, spreading the contracts across the floor, piecing together their history. Each one bore a name, a date, and a promise, but also a clause that spoke of forfeiture if the terms were broken. The land, the house, the wealth up, it was all tied to these unseen forces. Eli's practical side warred with his growing fear. He could burn the contracts, walk away, and leave the house to rot, but the promise of wealth, of a future for his family, gnawed him. He began to research the valley's history, visiting the village library, where old records confirmed the house's dark legacy. Families had risen and fallen, their fortunes tied to the stone house, each disappearing after a single generation. The librarian, an old woman with knowing eyes, whispered of curses and pacts, urging Eli to leave before it was too late. But Eli couldn't turn back now. The contracts were a puzzle, and he was determined to solve it, even if it meant facing the benefactors himself. For, as weeks turned to months, Eli's life became a dance between the mundane and the supernatural. By day, he worked the land around the stone house, coaxing life from the soil with newfound success. The fields, once barren, began to yield crops that defied the valley's harsh climate, as if the contract's promises were already taking hold. The villagers noticed, their whispers turning from fear to envy, but none dared visit. By night, Eli delved deeper into the contracts, translating fragments with the help of an old dictionary found in the house. The language was ancient, a mix of Latin and something older, and it spoke of a bargain struck centuries ago when the valley was first settled. The benefactors, it seemed, were guardians of the land's fertility, granting abundance to those who honored their terms. But the terms were vague, mentioning a debt that must be paid in kind. Eli's dreams grew troubled, filled with visions of hooded figures standing at the edge of his fields, their eyes glowing like embers. He began to notice changes in the house, doors that locked themselves, windows that opened in the night, and a faint hum that seemed to rise from the cellar. One night, he awoke to find the contracts rearranged on the attic floor, forming a circle around a single word. Now, panic gripped him, but so did determination. He decided to confront the mystery head-on, setting traps around the house. Simple things like flour on the floor to catch footprints, strings across doorways to detect movement. The next morning, the flour was undisturbed, but the strings were cut, and a new contract lay on the kitchen table, addressed to him. It bore his name, written in his own handwriting, though he had no memory of signing it. The terms were clear: in exchange for the land's bounty, he must offer a piece of himself. Eli's mind reeled. What did it mean? His time, his soul, his family. He thought of his children, safe in the village with their mother, and vowed to protect them. He burned the new contract, watching the flames devour it, but the house groaned as if in pain, and the crops outside withered overnight. The benefactors, it seemed, were not pleased. Eli knew he was running out of time. He needed answers, and the only place to find them was the chamber beneath the house, where the altar waited like a judge. 5. Eli prepared for his descent into the cellar with the care of a man facing his fate. He gathered tools, a flashlight, a knife, a notebook to record what he found, and a small cross his mother had given him, a token of faith he hadn't touched in years. The chamber felt different this time, the air heavier, the symbols on the floor pulsing with the faint light. The altar stood unchanged, but the contract on it was gone, replaced by a single black candle, its flame burning without melting the wax. Eli's breath caught as he approached, the flame flickering as if acknowledging his presence. He searched the chamber, finding more carvings that depicted a cycle of prosperity and ruin, each tied to the house's owners. The benefactors, he realized, were not bound by time. They had watched this valley for centuries, their power woven into its soil. Eli's flashlight caught a glint in the corner, a small, ornate key hidden in a crack. It fit the locked chest in the attic perfectly, revealing a second set of contracts, older and more brittle, written in blood. These spoke of the first settlers, who had begged the benefactors for survival in a harsh land, offering their lineage in return. Eli's heart sank as he read his own family name among them, a distant ancestor who had signed the original pact. The realization hit like a blow. He was no accidental occupant. The house had been waiting for him, a descendant meant to fulfill the debt. The contracts detailed a ritual to summon the benefactors, a ceremony to be performed at midnight on the equinox, just days away. Eli weighed his options. He could flee, abandon the house, and hope the benefactors would forget him. But the land's sudden fertility, the village's whispers, and the house's strange behavior suggested they would not let him go so easily. He decided to prepare for the ritual, not to honor it, but to confront the benefactors and demand answers. He studied the contracts, memorizing their terms, and gathered supplies as salt, iron, anything folklore claimed might ward off the supernatural. As the equinox approached, the house grew restless, its walls trembling, its shadows whispering his name. Eli felt the weight of his ancestors' choices, but also a spark of defiance. He would face the benefactors, not as a pawn, but as a man fighting for his future. 6. The night of the equinox arrived, cloaked in a storm that shook the valley with thunder. Eli stood in the chamber, the black candle's flame casting airy shadows on the altar. He had drawn a circle of salt around himself, clutching the iron knife and the cross, his heart pounding as the clock above struck midnight. The air grew thick, the symbols on the floor glowing brighter, and a low hum filled the chamber, vibrating in his chest. He spoke the words from the contract, his voice steady despite his fear, calling the benefactors to appear. The candle flared, and the shadows coalesced into forms of tall, cloaked figures with eyes like burning coals. They spoke in unison, their voices a chorus of whispers that echoed in his mind, demanding the debt be paid. Eli stood his ground, refusing to cower. He questioned them, asking why his family, why this house, why the endless cycle of ruin. The benefactors revealed the truth. The valley's fertility was their gift, sustained by the life force of those who signed their contracts. Each owner had paid with something precious, a time, health, or loved Oneza until they could give no more. Eli's ancestor had promised his lineage, binding every descendant to the pact. Eli's anger flared. He accused them of cruelty, of trapping innocent lives in their game. The benefactors seemed amused, offering him a choice: fulfill the debt and gain unimaginable wealth, or defy them and face their wrath. Eli thought of his children, of the barren farm he'd left behind, and of the journal's warning. He refused their offer, declaring the pact void. The chamber shook, the candle's flame roaring to the ceiling, and the benefactors' forms grew monstrous, their eyes blazing. Eli raised the cross, shouting words of defiance, and drove the iron knife into the altar. The symbols on the floor cracked, the hum became a scream, and the benefactors vanished in a burst of light. The house fell silent, the storm outside calming. Eli staggered back, unsure if he had won or merely delayed his fate. The contracts in the attic were ash when he checked, but the land outside remained fertile, a sign that the pact might be broken out or that the benefactors were waiting. 7. In the weeks that followed, Eli worked to rebuild his life, but the shadow of the benefactors lingered. The house no longer creaked or whispered, but he felt their presence in the quiet moments, as if they were watching from a distance. The crops flourished, drawing attention from beyond the valley of buyers, investors, even curious scholars who had heard of the stone house's legend. Eli sold the surplus, paying off his debts and securing a future for his family, but he never spoke of the contracts or the chamber. He buried the journal and the key in the cellar, sealing the passage with stones and cement, hoping to lock away the past. Yet, the village buzzed with new stories, tales of a farmer who had tamed a cursed house, and Eli wondered how long the peace would last. He began to research the benefactors, digging into ancient texts and folklore, learning of entities tied to the earth, neither good nor evil, but bound by their own strange code. They were not gods, but guardians of balance, demanding payment for their gifts. Eli realized the valley's prosperity might still be tied to their influence, and he vowed to protect his family from any future demands. He taught his children to question the unknown, to trust their instincts, and to never sign anything without understanding its cost. The stone house, once a symbol of fear, became a home, its walls warmed by laughter and light. But Eli kept the iron knife close, a reminder of the night he faced the shadows. He shared his story with the old librarian, who nodded knowingly, suggesting the benefactors might return in another form, another time. Eli accepted this, choosing to live in the present while preparing for the future. The valley thrived, its fields green and its people hopeful, but Eli knew the land held secrets that might never fully sleep. 8 years later, Eli stood on the porch of the stone house, now weathered but sturdy, watching his grandchildren play in the fields that had once been barren. The valley had changed, its prosperity drawing new families, new dreams, and new stories. The house was no longer feared, its legend softened by time, though Eli never forgot the contracts or the chamber below. He had become a quiet leader in the village, respected for his wisdom and his refusal to bow to fear. The crops continued to thrive, and the bank no longer haunted his doorstep, but Eli remained vigilant, teaching his family to honor the land without worshipping it. He had burned the last traces of the contracts, but he knew the benefactors were not gone, only dormant, their power tied to the valley's roots. Scholars occasionally visited, asking about the house's history, but Eli shared only fragments, protecting the truth to keep his family safe. He had found peace, but it was a peace tempered by caution, a balance between gratitude for the land's gifts and awareness of their cost. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Eli found a single page tucked beneath the floorboard, its edges crisp as if newly written. It bore no signature, only a single line: "The debt is never fully paid." His heart skipped, but he smiled, unafraid. He tore the page to pieces, scattering them to the wind, and walked back to his family, the house standing strong behind him. The valley stretched out, vibrant and alive, and Eli knew he had won not just for himself, but for those who would come after. The benefactors might linger, but so would his defiance, a legacy stronger than any contract. As the stars emerged, the stone house stood silent, its secrets buried but not forgotten, a testament to a poor farmer who dared to challenge the unknown and claim a future on his own terms.